Many times people will go to great lengths to defend the idea that God is a Trinity. One of the most common arguments is that God is love, and that proves the Trinity. Here is a summary of this often repeated argument. It goes something like this.
Now, one of it, for me, this is, I think, a slam dunk truth. Now, the Bible tells us that the supreme definition of God is love. By its very nature, love must be expressed in order to be love. God could not be love unless it was expressed. God, the Father, Son, and Spirit, has always existed, and that's why God is love. There's always been this perfect love between the members, the persons of the Trinity.
Is this slam dunk truth really true? Is God's love dependent on the existence of others? Can God be love if he is by himself? Does this slam dunk argument really hold up when examined? That's what we'll find out today. Welcome to Prove All Things. I'm Nader Mansour, and today we're examining the argument that God being love is the greatest evidence for the Trinity. Let's hear the reasoning behind this argument.
Now, one of it, for me, this is, I think, a slam dunk truth. The idea that Jesus was created means that at some point a person believes that God the Father, perhaps God the Father with the Spirit, but these people also don't believe the Spirit is God, did not exist, which would mean that at some point way back that God the Father existed all by himself and there was no other intelligent being. Now the Bible tells us that the supreme definition of God is love. By its very nature, love must be expressed in order to be love. So for you to say that there was a time when God existed and Jesus did not exist, God could not be love unless it was expressed. God, the Father, Son, and Spirit, something we'll talk about another question, has always existed, and that's why God is love. There's always been this perfect love between the members, the persons of the Trinity.
The false charge that Christ is created is often leveled at us. We already dealt with the difference between begotten and created in a previous episode. And the Spirit of God is no less divine or personal than God who owns it. But I want to deal with this argument about love. It is a serious claim to say that if God the Father existed by himself, then he isn't love. The evidence being that there would be no one else for him to love. This proves that all three persons of the Trinity are co-eternal. Is this really true and good reasoning? Not at all. The first problem with this type of reasoning is that it makes God's nature of love dependent on external factors, namely someone else to love. God is only love because there are others to love. So if you remove those others, then God isn't really love. The other problem with this reasoning is that it confuses the expression of love with the existence of love. Here's how the Bible puts it in 1 John 4, 8 and 9. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. In this was manifested the love of God toward us, because that God sent his only begotten Son into the world that we might live through him. The existence of love precedes its manifestation. The tree makes the fruit, not the other way around. God is love, and that's why he manifests that love. The greatest expression of God's love to us is that he gave his only begotten Son. We can't deny the sonship of Christ thinking that we are defending God's love. We actually end up destroying it.
By its very nature, love must be expressed in order to be love. God could not be love unless it was expressed.
This is how God's love is destroyed. We were told that love must be expressed in order to be love. Think about that for a minute. It says that the expression of love is what makes love. This is the opposite of what we just read in the Bible. Further, we are told that God could not be love unless it was expressed. This implies that without someone to love, God was selfish if he was all alone. This is another limitation of the Trinity God. You see, a poisonous snake doesn't become poisonous after it bites someone. And no one would imagine that restricting the snake from biting would mean that it's no longer poisonous. Such is the absurdity of this slam dunk argument about God's love. God told Moses that he is merciful and forgiving. According to the reasoning that we're dealing with here, that would mean that God was not forgiving before sin existed. Therefore, sin existed as long as God existed in order to prove that he is forgiving. This, of course, is total nonsense. It confuses God's forgiving nature with the expression of that forgiveness. Yet this is the exact same reasoning that is used to deny that Christ was begotten of God and insists on making the Son as old as his Father. The Bible actually refers to Christ as the Son of his love. Before anything was ever created, the first thing that happened is that this God of love brought forth a Son. After being brought forth from the Father, the Son declares, "I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him." The expression of love doesn't create love, but it shows the love that was already there. God expressed his love in having a Son. And when the time came to manifest his love to us, he was willing to give that Son in order to save us. No wonder the Bible calls him the Son of his love. So don't confuse the expression of love with the existence of love. God being love is an intrinsic part of him. It's his nature. It's not only present because there is someone else for him to love. Adam didn't suddenly become a loving being after Eve was made, but he could now lavish his love on her. The love that was part of his nature when he was made in God's image, even when he was the only human being in the garden. God is not dependent on anyone else to be love.
And that's why God is love. There's always been this perfect love between the members, the persons of the Trinity.
Judging God by such faulty human reasoning results in dangerous conclusions. The conclusion that God the Father, Son, and Spirit has always existed, and that's why God is love, is actually a direct contradiction of reason and the Scriptures. If it takes the existence of all three persons to maintain that God is love, then what happened when Christ was dead for 3 days in the grave? I think you're now seeing how this argument is self-defeating. To prove God's love, one is required to deny the Son of his love. The Trinity God is a philosophical idea that is based on faulty human reasoning that contradicts the Bible. This argument about love is a clear demonstration of that. In trying to defend the Trinity, God's very nature and character of love is actually destroyed. Let's keep proving all things and holding fast that which is good.